From RF Smart, this is On Par, a podcast that delves into the very heart of the healthcare system, its supply chain. And here's your host, Sarah Archer.
Hello, and welcome back to On Par. My name is Sarah Archer, and I am your host on this podcast. We talk about a lot of different things. We talk about supply chain within the healthcare system. We talk about RF Smart and Oracle Cloud. We talk about our customers, and we talk about different functions of RF Smart, which is what we are doing today. Joining me in the studio, I have Ryan Geddings and I have Bill Brewer to talk about some different functions within RF Smart. So multi-line receiving is what we're talking about today. This is a very exciting piece of functionality that can bring a lot of benefit to your supply chain. So I'm very excited. And to kick things off, I'm going to let Ryan introduce himself. Ryan, not to spoil or steal your thunder, but you this is your baby.
Yes. Thanks, Sarah, for inviting me today. I appreciate it. So my name is Ryan Geddings. I am a UX designer for RF Smart. Before joining RF Smart, I had a fair amount of military experience working with different supply chains, inventory organizations, while I was in the service.
Awesome. Well, thank you for being here today, Ryan. Thank you for your service. And Bill, you are also here. If you've listened to the podcast, you know Bill, but I will let you do a little introduction of yourself anyways. Bill Brewer.
Very good. Good to be back. Thank you for inviting me again, Sarah. Good to be here with you, Ryan. Bill Brewer, as Sarah mentioned, I am the healthcare product manager here at RF Smart, and I have responsibility for our strategy and direction, all things healthcare. Prior to coming to RF Smart, spent the last approximately 15 years or so working in the healthcare industry, principally in hospitals in various supply chain leadership roles.
So we're going to talk about multi-line receiving today. It's really interesting, multi-line receiving is because it is a deviation from the way that people typically receive. When we think of a typical receiving transaction in a WMS system, multi-line receiving looks different. So Ryan, could you just start by telling us what is multi-line receiving?
So multi-line receiving, in a nutshell, is a very quick and easy way to look at an entire order of goods and identify exactly what you have and move it forward, receiving it in as few clicks as possible.
All right. So Ryan, you were really instrumental in the creation of this function, as we mentioned before. Could you give us the origin story? Why did we create multi-line receiving?
So multi-line receiving was actually one of the very first projects I worked on when I came to RF Smart. It was the first kind of idea that our project manager at the time brought to me. He said he had a customer. This customer had been working in the supply chain, receiving goods for many, many years. This guy could look at a box, know exactly what was in it, how many was in it, where it was going, and move it forward. But he wasn't really a tech guy. And he actually found a process that many of our customers love to be burdensome, the way he was actually trying to receive these items. So he brought to us this idea of how can I just see, plug in, and go. And so what we did is we kind of went, interviewed him, I got an idea of what he was looking for, looked at some similar features that are out there on the market, and moved forward with an idea that was designed to be intuitive, simple, and quick, letting the user just plug in exactly what they need and go.
And Ryan, that's a really good point, and something we see pretty commonly in the healthcare ecosystem, and specifically, I think like you experienced with the customer you're referring to, and certainly in my time working in the industry, oftentimes what you observe at a receiving dock at a healthcare provider is oftentimes these folks are opening up the box, inspecting it, checking it against the packing slip, and it can be received on a desktop computer, which is something that we determined was pretty pervasive in the healthcare industry. And Ryan, I think, with the story you just told and sort of thinking about that, I think that's really what led us down this path with MLR.
Guys, one question that I have for you. So I'm envisioning this, receiving, and in the terms of hospitals or healthcare receiving, they're often receiving these massive orders at one time, right? And so why multi-line receiving versus traditional receiving? What are some of the benefits of that?
So our traditional receiving module is very good when you have a lot of different data points to collect and you're not really working on these very large orders. When you want a user to validate very specific things, lot numbers, quality control, identifying if there's a damage to an item, those items. But when you're receiving these truckloads worth of goods, and many of those goods are repeated over and over and over again, like boxes and boxes of masks or gowns. This is just a much easier, faster, simpler way for the user to do it. They know exactly how many are in the box. They can see that the box is in good shape. They've developed a relationship with their vendors that allows them to move forward through this multi-line receiving process that much smoother.
And I'm just thinking, too, with being able to receive, and Bill, as you mentioned, receiving like at a mobile computer station, there are certain benefits to this multi-line receiving that just kind of extend past just like the initial thought of time saving, right? What are some of those benefits from you guys as well?
Yeah, it's a good point. And Ryan, as you were mentioning that a moment ago, the one thing that comes to mind that's very common, and you're absolutely right? In the healthcare space, it's very common to have large POs to, your key vendors, distributors, things like that, and these come in and they can be, upwards of 100-line POs. And oftentimes what we see is this process around kind of exception-based receiving. And the idea behind exception-based receiving is if your distributor, your supplier, maybe pre-COVID, we were pretty accustomed to most of those orders getting shipped complete. So maybe 90, 95% of the order would ship. And so you could imagine if you had a 100-line PO and only 3 of those lines didn't ship and maybe 2 of them shipped short, then you potentially only have a couple lines that you need to modify. So the remainder of those, the 90 plus other lines, very simply, you just want to receive the quantity that you requested and was ultimately shipped. And so that verification in healthcare organizations is often done against the packing slip to the goods. And so the process of entering that in the actual system, to Ryan's point around, oftentimes you don't have the complexities of, quality control, lot number, serial number, even though it may seem like those should exist in the healthcare space. Those often happen at other points downstream in the supply chain. And so this idea that MLR brings to the table of just being able to receive by exception is something that's created a tremendous amount of efficiency for our customers.
Also, there's a statistic with this that I love, which is that you can reduce the amount of clicks it takes to receive orders from about 250 to 1, which I think is just crazy and cool. So great work there. One thing, Ryan, that I was thinking about too, was you made a comment about how it was really important to you that it was easy to use. And I think that is just a really valuable part of this multi-line receiving. It's a benefit that it's easy to train. Can you make a couple comments about that?
Absolutely. So that was absolutely important as I was moving forward with designing multi-line receiving. We needed to make sure we were using language that made sense to the people on the receiving dock. It may not be language that I used in the supply chain stuff I worked in, but it makes sense to them. It's the terms they use. We needed a user to be able to look at this and understand exactly what they were looking at. So maybe it looks similar to a PO they've dealt with before, so that they can just move forward. From a customer standpoint, what a customer really wants is to be able to give the product to their users, and their users can pick it up and go. Minimum interruption to their day-to-day in training, minimum interruption in their day-to-day in receiving. And so that was really a primary focus that we went through as we were going through the redesign process and ensuring that we did things right the first time, right out the door for our customers.
And I want to give credit there to Ryan, because I think, sometimes what gets lost in software development and may be unfamiliar to some of our listeners here today is that, software doesn't just happen by chance, right? What Ryan does and understanding the user and the user experience and really diving into that, and Ryan's one of the best I've ever worked with, is so critical, because it means that as soon as you put that product in somebody's hands, it makes sense, right? It's like these devices that we all carry around attached to our bodies all day long that you can hand it to your grandma, you can hand it to your mother, and they get it. And I think Ryan does a phenomenal job, and MLR is a great testament to that.
Ryan, are there any other benefits of multi-line receiving we have not talked about so far?
So one thing that I think is really important to mention about multi-line receiving is we allow users to get into the document, the PO, with one click. They search for the PO number. It'll come in and load the PO. It loads every line. It loads the quantities remaining, the quantities shipped, where it's going to, what type of order it is. All of that information is captured and presented to the user right up front. Then after the user has gone through and identified the lines that they want, the quantity that they want to receive, we actually send that information to Oracle and ask Oracle to validate that what we're doing is correct. That there are no errors that are going to need to be corrected that might have to be corrected further down the supply chain. Once we have that, if everything is good, we send that off to Oracle. We get back a receipt. The user has that receipt number and they're able to move forward. If there is a problem, what we've done is we've actually interrupted the process, let the user know right at this point that there's a problem. This is what the problem is. This is how they should look at correcting it.
And that's a great point, Ryan. And I think just more broadly speaking about our relationship with Oracle Cloud, which I know we've covered on some former podcast episodes. I think what's so critical to point out is what you just mentioned in terms of, pre-validating and everything like that is our deep understanding of how Oracle Cloud and specifically the supply chain components of Oracle Cloud function is what makes it possible for us to create these applications such as multi-line receiving that aren't just efficient for an end user to capture and put in information, but they're also super efficient in terms of they're not creating errors downstream. And that doesn't just happen by chance. That comes from our years of experience in this space and really understanding the Oracle Cloud product.
Such a great point, Bill. As we had been talking initially about MLR, what really came to mind to me is like, this is awesome and amazing, and everyone should be utilizing this. And so I would really love, I know that you, Bill, have a great story of a time that MLR really came in clutch and worked for one of our customers. Can you share that with us?
So, Sarah, that's a great point. And, the story that I'll tell here in just a moment is specific to one customer. But I think what's been really exciting over the last couple months as we've seen this product really mature in the market is not only have we been able to bring this to customers that are going live newly on RF Smart, but existing customers as well. And Ryan mentioned one of them that was sort of the origin for the entire project. But what's really cool to see is you've got customers that were very satisfied with our current receiving functionality, very much was meeting their needs, but we had taken the time to really understand and develop something very specific to the healthcare market. And again, Ryan did a great job there in really listening to the customer and designing something that fit the needs of those end users. And so this story that I'm going to tell is just sort of repeated over and over and over again. And it's been a very exciting couple months, and it's one of the reasons I'm kind of excited to share more about MLR here today with our audience. But anyway, finally getting around to it, specific to the story around the customer, I was actually pretty instrumental in a part of their implementation and go live. This is a customer that was newly going live on RF Smart and Oracle Cloud, a large healthcare system in the northeastern United States. And they had made the decision through their implementation process to actually not use RF Smart for receiving, neither multi-line receiving nor our traditional receiving workflow. And they had determined that they thought they could do that better and more efficiently in Oracle, and then they would just work with our delivery software and integrate the delivery piece with their receiving that they were doing in Oracle. I was there during those initial days of go live and saw their team struggle a little bit, right? And it's not that receiving in Oracle can't be done. It's just it takes a few more clicks. It's maybe not as focused on the efficiency for that end user. And so as the days went on and the folks were getting used to and comfortable with the new system and trying to learn, you started to see the skids back up further and further and further down the dock. To about day 3 or 4 as I was there, the screams started to come from the end-using departments, the operating room, the cath lab. I was actually up on a nursing unit, and I was mistaken for an actual employee of the healthcare system working in supply chain. She looked at me and she's like, "When am I getting my supplies?" And I'm like, I don't have the answer to that, but I'll figure that out for you. And the problem just continued to grow because they could not churn through the volume that they had. And I remember sitting down with some of their operations leaders, and I said, "Look, we've got this solution, multi-line receiving. We can turn it on in a day. It's simple training. Your receivers will immediately get it, and it's going to create value, and it's going to help you to get through this backlog." And we did just that. And still one of my favorite stories in my time in this role is walking out of one of those hospitals. I had driven over there that day to train 2 of their receivers on multi-line receiving. They got it. They didn't give me an actual hug, but they gave me a virtual hug, and they were just so ecstatic that what they now could do was so much faster, so much more efficient, and by the way, was fully integrated with our delivery solution as well. So it cut out a whole bunch of additional steps. And again, I think that's just a testament to really the value that this solution can provide in the healthcare market.
Absolutely. I love that story. I think that it's so great that you were able to really see that need firsthand and then execute it right there on the spot. And of course, great kudos to Ryan for his very easy to use function that allowed them to get it up and going so quickly and get through that backlog. Guys, one of the things that probably some people who are listening today are like, great, this sounds good, sold, let's do it. But we want to make sure that they have the best practices to make multi-line receiving the best that it can be. And so what are some multi-line receiving best practices that our listeners today need to consider?
Yeah, it's a good question, Ryan. I'm going to let you jump in here as well, but I'll just start by, Sarah maybe mentioning this, which is, as many of our podcast listeners probably know, there are significant differences between how healthcare supply chain operates and non-traditional distribution, right, in the B2B, the B2C space. And the reality is, right, mistakes in the healthcare environment, sort of like the story that I just mentioned relative to the customer story, they have real impact, right? We are taking care of patients. We are, while there may be a dissatisfied customer down the line in the manufacturing, consumer product goods, whatever the case may be space, the reality is in healthcare, we're taking care of patients. And so it makes all that the more critical. And so when we think about best practices, Ryan, I'm going to lean on you a little bit here to offer some insight, maybe around, leaning on your suppliers and things like that.
So I would say one of the first things is, that trust that we talked about before with the suppliers. If you've got that good trusted relationship with what they're sending, or maybe they even provide some advanced shipping notices, anything along those lines, you know what's coming. You know it's going to be there. You can trust, you can move forward. It's great. It works well for that. Another thing I would say is, we did design this so it works on a desktop computer. It works on a mobile tablet. These are two factors that'll really just help whether you're working at a stationary receiving platform or if you're mobile, to just get this stuff in and get it moved forward. As Bill said before, it's fully integrated in with our delivery solution. It tells you exactly where it's going to go. And further down the line, somebody can actually just say, yep, I've got this item. I've got my scrubs. Yay, I can move forward. It's awesome. People are happier knowing that they can move forward along these.
Yeah, and I'll offer another one, maybe a comment, Sarah, around ASNs, which is advanced ship notices, so A56s, is another place where we've seen many of our healthcare customers create additional efficiency. And that's not necessarily directly related to MLR, but I'll get to that in a moment. And with ASNs, and specifically within Oracle Cloud, customers have two different options, right? So an ASN is a notice that comes from the supplier that says, hey, I'm shipping you X amount, right? It's an advanced ship notice. And we've actually seen many of our healthcare customers activate the functionality within Oracle to automatically confirm those ASNs. And going back to what Ryan mentioned, that's about establishing a trusted relationship with your supplier, right? If your supplier is saying they're going to send you 4 and you're automatically going to process that receipt predicated on the assumption that those 4 actually ship, that's based on a pretty trusted relationship. And that doesn't make sense for every supplier, every product. But we've seen a number of our customers that have said, look, our stuff we get from our prime distributor, we're just going to auto-confirm that. Now, beyond that, and specifically getting back to MLR, we also have ASN functionality integrated with that. So for those suppliers that maybe it doesn't make sense to auto-confirm the ASN, or for those organizations that say, you know what, we're not going to auto-confirm ASNs, the beautiful thing about the way we consume those within MLR is the user can be presented with what that supplier has said they are shipping. So if 6 went out on the PO, but the supplier is shipping in 4 based on an ASN, when they open MLR, they're automatically going to see those 4 represented there, and they can just confirm it. So again, creating some additional efficiency there too.
I also have a best practice to add, which is that based on the story that you told just a few minutes ago, Bill, that you should integrate it with delivery, which is another function.
So one of my favorite things about the way we integrate this with our delivery functionality is the ability to capture pictures, the ability to capture packing slips, the ability to capture the tracking numbers. That's absolutely one of my favorite things. If you're receiving a shipment, say, and it's a smaller shipment, comes from UPS. UPS will provide the end user with a tracking number. That tracking number only tells the end user that it has arrived at their facility. Once it arrives at the facility, then somebody else gets a hold of it, has to receive it, has to process it, and take it up to the end user. Our multi-line receiving function actually allows us to take that original tracking number, attach it to our delivery, and move forward with it. So that same number can be actually used for the entire life cycle of that shipped good to the end user.
That you are, from the very beginning, making sure that your inventory gets to where it needs to go. I love that. And I love, Ryan, you mentioned the image capture feature, and that is something that we get a ton of questions about. Are you able to capture images? Which is just really a neat part of the RF Smart functionality as well. Well, guys, as we wrap up today, I wanted to play a game. Hopefully you guys also want to play a game. So I thought that we could kind of make our little wrap up a little game, which would be that I'm going to give you like 15 seconds. We'll let Ryan go first to tell me your top 3 reasons to use multi-line receiving. And then we'll let Bill go, and your reasons have to be different from Ryan. So
it's like Family Feud.
It's like Family Feud. Yes. So you've got 15 seconds to tell me 3 things, 3 reasons, and then we will adjourn for the day. But Ryan, are you ready?
I'm ready.
All right. I'm going to count backwards. Ready? 3, 2, 1.
All right. Top 3 reasons to use multi-line receiving. 1, it's quick. 2, it's intuitive. 3, it integrates really well with our delivery.
That was 10 seconds.
Wow.
Very nice.
On.
The pressure's on. Are you ready?
I had a list in my head, and you took 3 of them.
All right.
Now you need 3 more. All right. Are you ready?
Yep.
3, 2, 1.
It just works. 1 screen, 1 step. Hey, you kind of called that one a moment ago. And then no real setup required.
He beat you. 9:49 right there.
And he even paused. And
I know.
I was hoping.
He paused to think, but you did a little introduction, which is what I think cut you down on time a little bit. But I like all of those reasons. Those are great reasons to consider multi-line receiving. Guys, for the people listening today, if they want to know more about multi-line receiving, they're like, where can I see this? How can I find out more information? Where can they go?
To our website.
Which is?
rfsmart.com.
Exactly. Click on healthcare.
I wasn't prepared for that test.
Click on healthcare, and you can fill out a form which lets us know that you want to see a demo. Or if you're already working with somebody from RF Smart, you've got an account rep, you can also reach out to them, and they can help you set up a demo to see this as well. Guys, as always, this is very fun. Thank you for being here. For those of you who are listening, if you have not subscribed to the podcast yet, I would encourage you to do so. We've got a lot of really great content, including more of these kind of functionality call-out type podcast episodes that can help you kind of understand these functions and why you might need them in less than 30 minutes, which is a great value for a deep dive like this. You can subscribe anywhere you listen to podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, or on our website, which is rfsmart.com/onpar, ONPAR. We have an email subscription list there. So if you'd like to get email updates about when a new episode goes out, you can subscribe there. But Ryan, Bill, thank you guys so much for being here today.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you, Sarah.
We'll catch you guys next time. Thanks.
All right. Bye, everybody.
Bye.